It's a Thursday at 3 p.m., and you know what that means. Time for another draft on DraftKings, where draft for $15 million in total prizes. The world of NFL best ball, the NFL season, just over 50 days away. It's time to get your entries in during DraftKings Best Ball Week. More details about that as we go on. But the big thing, you put in your entry here, you get a free entry as well when you do draft the DraftKings Millie Maker right now. And of course, I'm already in the draft room here. Our draft kicks off in 30 seconds. Of course, I want to lead you guys in here with the 3 rules of thumb we always talk about as I wait for my pick to come up in the very non-influential 11 spot here. But 3 things we talk about every single video, again, similar to the world of DFS, where there's just certain rules of thumb, abiding by projections, trying to max out your salary. And for the most part, it's going to be your general DFS things that Stochastic will tell you all the time, try to beat the good principles into you. In basketball, what you're looking for is number 1, average draft position. You see it on the screen here. Same thing for any of the other platforms out there that have best ball tournaments. This ADP here, this average draft position is everything. That's your projection. That's your salary. Some extent, it's also your ownership projection all rolled into one. So basically, the way that it looks right now for how ADP works, and if you are new to the space, this is the way to view it. Just take players around ADP, absorb that value for the most part. You don't always have to take the same players that are at the top of the queue over and over and over again, especially as you get later on in a draft. But being mindful of ADP, soaking up value, those are the things that should make you unique as a best ball team as opposed to other ways to make that work. Number 2, stacking and correlation. Much like did I say correlation? Correlation, of course, what we talk about for NFL DFS, your QBs, with your wide receivers, your tight ends, that's an obvious one. But in best ball, you can add more on top of that. You can have multiple receivers, multiple tight ends for a team like Baltimore, I guess, be one example that comes to mind. You can also tack RBs on top of that. You're trying to capture the rising tide of a team throughout the season. So stacking and correlating much like an NFL DFS, if not ramped up more so than you would in any large field tournaments for NFL DFS. You want to do that in best ball. Rule number 3 is a really important one. Your expected value is realized in week 17. People get obsessed about advance rate. In general, you're expected to advance about 16% of your teams because basically 2 out of 12 teams are advancing in most of the pod formats out there, whether it's DraftKings, other sites out there. But that said, it's not all about advance rates. You can advance 50% of your teams and get none of the finals. So building teams that'll be able to spike in the playoffs, and in particular, where all the money's on the line when $2 million goes to first place. That's in week 17 on DraftKings. So some of the main things to know there if you are new to the world of best ball. And of course, we'll talk about a lot more here coming up throughout the video and a lot of the nuance and building quality teams, hopefully, along the way. We got Nico Collins here, Ashton Genty here, Derrick Henry coming up a little bit on DraftKings. I'm happy to get more Nico Collins. Feel like I've been low on him throughout the draft process so far, whether it is on DraftKings or some of the other big sites out there. For Nico Collins, a player that I certainly believe in a good amount, should be your number 1 receiver for Houston by a wide margin, unless there's some massive first-year run for a guy like Jaden Higgins or Christian Kirk's a lot less dust than he showed last year. I do like when I'm picking around the turn. We are picking the 11th spot here. Like to generally get a wide receiver and a running back because I do think it tends to behoove you to balance yourself early on, get that exposure to high upside players. No issue with Brian Thomas here, even though if Travis Hunter pays off, Brian Thomas might have a harder time doing that. But I'll go Devon Achane here. So a Nico Collins, Devon Achane start. No correlation between these teams. They're not playing in week 17 or anything, but it is something. Well, Houston, for what it's worth, Houston's playing the Chargers in week 17. Miami playing Tampa Bay in week 17. So we'll see if we can get some of those guys later on in the draft. But for right now, happy to get Nico Collins and Devon Achane as 2 players that maybe haven't hit a ceiling yet in the league. For Achane, we've certainly seen him put up per game ceilings. Might be hard for him to top. But for Nico Collins, I think putting together a year where he's kind of in that Jefferson tier, it's not impossible. So we'll see how it looks. Make sure to retweet this on Twitter as well, because I'm going to get tagged on it by the Stochastic tweet. But I got to make sure I get it out to my meager following out there. My 20K who ride or die harder than anybody else out there because I don't even go on Twitter anymore. Shouts to the chat as well. Do appreciate EMAC working on the best balls today. Yes. So I think the deal they have going right now is if you put in today, DK's had different deals every day. So this is not promo, really, just me kind of as a word of advice for you guys out there that should try to squeeze as much as you can. Deposit bonuses, things like that. Playing bonuses as well for best ball, where if you put in that first entry again on DraftKings, you do get 1 for free. There's also, if you max out the tournament, you get $300 in DraftKings cash. And every day this week, they've also had deals going where earlier in the week, because if you put an entry in, you got some DK dollars back. Then there was a leaderboard thing that we had the last time we were on stream. I think there was some golf entry stuff yesterday. Today, the deal, I believe, is that you get your entry in and you get 2 $3 entries when you put in a $20 best ball Millie Maker entry. So one way to get some free entries in, I believe you can do that 3 times. So you get yourself basically 6 entries into the play action for either week 1 or the playoff best ball, or excuse me, not the playoff best ball, the regular best ball play action as well. So the usual $3.20 max, I think, is the format on that 100K to first place. So That's what you have going on in DraftKings today. A lot of deals going on, of course, for best ball week. So check out the app yourself. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app. Take your shots on all that. Let's catch up here. I always get in before the stream starts. If you want to know when I'm going to go live, join my Discord either through the OddsShopper Tails package or through my YouTube @SplashPlay Pod channel. And you can find out when I go. Sitting out today, so it'll kill your EV. To be clear, I think you do generally kill each other's EV if you enter streamers drafts all the time. It's not something I would recommend, but it is something that certainly, if you are trying to prevent yourself from losing too much expected value, going into streamer rooms all the time, maybe a wise move, or not going into them all the time, rather. The exact opposite of what I said. So Rashid Rice, we should talk about up top here as well. And I do want to show you guys a tool you can see on the tabs here, which I'll share with you guys real fast. It's called fantasy.vip, and this is not me plugging something I have any ownership stake in or anything. It's not a stochastic tool either, so your mileage may vary. Stochastic does not endorse this product at all, but I do think it's an important one. Something that we didn't talk about at much length on stream, though I did mention when it happened. DraftKings put out data for the Millie Maker, which is kind of important because basically you don't normally get ownership data in stream for a tournament. You normally can make guesswork on that. There's some sites out there. Brick75, Brian Hooper guy, has been a friend of Stochastic for a while. Top DFS player. He's created some top, products out there that can kind of distill what ownership is, correlation ownership rather. The combinatorial ownership be the correct phrasing. So let's say in this case here where somebody took Saquon Barkley, Trey McBride. He thinks he's doing something really unique. In reality, though, we could actually just pull it up here. You can see that Saquon Barkley and Trey McBride, they get picked 18% of the time together. So, or rather, when Saquon Barkley is picked 18% of the time, Trey McBride's on the team is a better way to look at it. You can see some of the stuff with tools like this. There's a couple other sites that have a similar one, but I haven't, honestly, to be candid, this Fantasy VIP site, I think has done the best job putting it together. And again, I have no stake in them, don't know the guy, but I think in terms of presenting this data well, it's something to take a look at. So DraftKings put this data out publicly. It's been available for a couple weeks now, and now you're starting to see some people use it in more, I guess, consumer-friendly products, B2C product kind of ways. So that's something I've been looking at throughout. So wanted to touch on this a little bit up top. I'll maybe consult it as we go. In fact, here, you know what? We did it's got to be not very uncommon. Eco Collins, if you go with my spelling for it. You can see Nico and Trey McBride don't occur too often. Nico, and why is the first letter not coming in for me? Okay. And Devon Achane. So apparently Devon Achane and Nico Collins only drafted 2.9% of the time together. So I actually got a unique pairing here, which surprises me. It shouldn't be that unique, but I guess maybe the people that the players people take on the turn are not frequent. I do often take Derrick Henry at the turn, so maybe I'm a problem, I guess, is that as well. Part of that as well, but there we go. All right, we got a pick coming up here. Draft a free play action ticket while watching. There we go. Fact74. Fact74, appreciate you supporting me on one of the other sites out there as well, because I did see that username using my promo code. So shout out to you. All right, we got some potential week 17 correlation here. Mike Evans available. Terry McLaurin, if I wanted to push up Jaden Daniels, I could do that here as well. Do love my boy Jaden. I do like the idea of getting Miami, Tampa Bay stacked up here a little bit more. So Mike Evans, I'm cool with. McLaurin, maybe this guy will pass him up because of the fact McLaurin is looming for a holdout. Very unhappy with this contractual situation right now with Washington. But this guy takes McLaurin, so we won't get him back. And that's fine. Could take Jaden Daniels here, unstacked with McLaurin. The Jaden Daniels-McLaurin duo is actually pretty lightly owned because previously these guys didn't align well in terms of the ADP pockets they were in. Breece Hall would be a reasonable pick as well to take another RB, building more balanced. But I'll try the elite QB. I am a sucker for Jaden Daniels. I'd still love to be 2x the field on him after last year. He was my biggest rookie stands at QB. If anybody out there followed my content, I know some of you guys did, but for you guys that didn't, he and Bucky Irving, two of my biggest stands. Number 3, Marshawn Lloyd. Welcome to the world of best ball. You get some things really right, and the one thing you get wrong ends up being basically a stone cold zero. But happy to get Jaden Daniels here with the elite QB build, having 2 receivers and RB. We're building pretty balanced to start. So we'll see what we get on the way back. A lot of picks before we go again. And I'll reference this Fantasy VIP tool again. I'll link it in the chat too. Again, I don't know if Stochastic's going to love me promoting a product that they don't own, but it's something that, frankly, they're not going to make this year, to be my guess. So check it out for yourself if you want to get a little bit of an edge on DraftKings. And if you are listening to this stream, you're not watching the live chat, it's fantasy.vip/DKMM if you want to go to the tool that I'm showing you on screen here on YouTube today. But Rashee Rice, so he's the big news of the day. There's a couple other ones. In fact, got one very right on the last stream with Quinshawn Judkins, but we can talk about that in a minute. Rashee Rice is going to be the big question here. You see him going at pick 29, so a bit of a fall in this room where he's normally been going around the, let's check his exact ADP. Rashee. He's got a 22 ADP right now. So basically what the results of his legal proceedings were, which frankly, and again, I think there's a lot of good Twitter legal experts out there. That sounds like a bit. But there's one guy, Drew Davenport, I think has generally gotten things a lot right for the most part. Did get this one pretty wrong, where he thought basically there wasn't going to be any legal action on Rashee Rice until 2026. I think the way that he was viewing it, basically, no suspension until you get an actual, judge ruling is how the NFL generally does things for things that aren't domestic violence, like in Quinshawn Judkins' case. The point being for Rashee Rice now, he's got to serve 30 days in jail, but he has 5 years to do that. So that's not something that should take him off the field this year. The bigger thing is that he did have to plead or acknowledge some amount of guilt here. So that's something where the NFL is likely going to suspend him. Seems like based on what Adam Schefter did, my guess would be 2 to 4 games. That is me doing guesswork, which is part of what we do in best ball. But people are going to panic about it. As we've talked about a lot in DraftKings, people will panic about a questionable tag on a player, which is just an injury reflection that has absolutely nothing to do what a player will do in week 1, let alone week 17, which is when all the money's there. So people will freak out about Rashee Rice. They probably shouldn't as much as they will. But when you start to see him coming down in rooms, he could be something that we've talked about before. This concept of falling knife, where people say that basically, you want to see what the market has for the most part, where they take a player. I think Rashee Rice, it wouldn't shock me if he fell when people overreact and worry about him missing a month, maybe even in their mind missing 8 weeks, which I don't think will happen. I think, again, 4 weeks to me feels like about the max there. Chiefs themselves expect 2 to 4 weeks with the most recent reports. As for Rashee Rice right now, if you take him at 29, you might be getting him at a price tag that he's going to end up at. You might also be grabbing him earlier than some other rooms will get him, where he might go to this 40 range. Wouldn't shock me if he goes more closer to Xavier Worthy. Worthy comes up a little bit. I think that would be a natural kind of push-pull dynamic between wide receiver or, assumed wide receiver 1 and assumed wide receiver 2. But Rashee Rice, I think, is in a buying window when you see him come lowly enough. I've been low on Rashee Rice. Just not crazy about the situation that's there for him this year, where they've really dedicated a lot of resources to making wide receiver better. The team, though, projected for a ton of points. I think they're a top 5 rather projected team in terms of Vegas totals this year. So they should be a better offense than they've been in years past. In the most recent years past, especially, they've been relying on the defense more. But Rashee Rice, to me, I think his price tag is probably a little bit high if you take him in the late 20s, would be my guess. We're on the clock here, though. I've got a couple Q tag guys, so we could test that theory. You saw a massive wide receiver run there. Frankly, egregiously aggressive. Didn't open up a ton of value for us, but I'm happy to take either Joe Mixon or Kenneth Walker. Mixon, I tend to think the role is a little more solid because there isn't a Zach Charbonnet there who did kind of earn a role last year when Kenneth Walker was banged up. For Mixon, though, he is hurt, was hurt rather in minicamp and OTAs. I was in a walking boot. Part of why they brought in Nick Chubb is a kind of a contingency play against him. But for Mixon, he was a guy getting over 20 touches a game. Like for Kenneth Walker, I don't think that's in the range of outcomes very often. So I normally like Mixon more, but I've got enough Mixon at this point. This guy goes up to get Debo here, seemingly, I don't know. I'm sure he has a logic for it. Chuba Hubbard, really not a player I'm crazy about. Taking the 3rd RB at this point, also not something I'm crazy about. I do like Chris Godwin. Do like Odunze as well. I'll take Odunze here. I think my normal instinct would be to do the Tampa Bay double here, grab Mike Evans, grab Chris Godwin. But at this point, I think Odunze doesn't have us as reliant on the concept of Tampa Bay stacking it up. And really, to me, if I take Evans and Godwin, I'd like to get Baker Mayfield on that. And I'm not sure I'm going to be adding QB in that range again after taking Jaden Daniels so early. So we've got a Jaden Daniels, Devon Achane, Kenneth Walker start here with Nico Collins, Mike Evans, and Rome Odunze. So no tight ends yet. Got an elite QB. And trying to keep it balanced. Besides, that's the goal. So Quinshawn Judkins be the other one here. And I did talk about this on Tuesday on both my streams on my @SplashPlay Pod channel. If you want to see me do more drafts across a bunch of different best ball platforms, check that channel out. And I'll try to link it in chat here because I always say it and I forget to think that, oh yeah, I should probably grab the YouTube link before I do that. But I'll be doing a draft on all the 3 major sites tomorrow, competing for in total $4.5 million. If you want to check that out on this link that I'm going to drop right now to the YouTube chat. Dog, can you maybe stay in one spot? My 5, I guess now, yeah, she's 5 months old now. Maybe just over 6. 6-month-old puppy just wandering around here, and like absolutely what I don't want a dog who has questionable bladder control to be doing. So prefer she get up here and sit. There you go. All right, good job, Kitty. Of course, Kitty, you've seen on stream before, and I was doing MLB streams on the regular. Now she just ruins my attention span during best ball streams. Quinshon Judkins. So the big thing for him right now, which was basically where my brain had landed on it when I talked about it on Tuesday, saw that Pro Football Talk had an article that was the same thing for Quinshon Judkins. So if you missed it, basically he is currently under suspicion of domestic violence, was arrested for it. The reports were that he may have punched his partner in the face. Obviously, you might have seen on TMZ today, Denise Richards had photos coming out of similar situation with her. Her husband. It's not good when you get the pictures out there. It's another part of it. But really, the main thing for Judkins, the worst part for him is that, and I guess it's all relative, he didn't sign his deal yet. He's one of the second-round picks that's been holding out for guaranteed money because basically Jaden Higgins from the Texans, that rookie got guaranteed money. Now all the second-round picks want guaranteed money. Trey Harris was the first guy to hold out. Basically, they're all going to be holding out to varying degrees. I think a few defensive linemen have started to sign something like that. But for the most part, skill position guys who are in that same tier as Higgins and probably running backs too, they want guaranteed money. Apparently, the reports that came out from, I think, what's Mary Kay Cabot, I think is her name, the Cleveland beat reporter lady, who's primarily, one of the better sourced Cleveland local beat people. She no pun intended. But she had pointed out that basically the Browns now don't want to sign him at all until he figures out his domestic violence issues. So he can't get suspended until he gets signed. So normally in a domestic violence case, it happened last year with one of the rookies coming in. Basically, you end up getting probably on the commissioner's exempt list for 5 games, something like that. He can't even start that clock of getting a 5-game suspension under just, having a credible case of domestic violence against him. So the worst case scenario, and this is me being, Debbie Downer, Debbie Doomsday really for his rookie year, he might not play this year. Like that's a decent possibility because the legal process has to run itself through. Not a good situation, but like for how it looks right now for Quinshon Judkins, you're waiting for him to get signed. That might not happen now. You're waiting for him to get suspended. That can't happen until he gets signed because he doesn't have any formal paperwork with the league. And if the team doesn't want to do it, they're not going to move it forward. So like people will buy the dip now. People might still take him in ADP in some rooms. The ADP has fallen enough though that he's generally falling. I still would really have a hard time clicking him. Like if he's going more in that Jaden Blue range, I think would be even now more of a, like a worse outcome than I thought in my brain last time I did streams on Tuesday. I would just say that for people out there, really exercise caution with stuff like that. Normally, you do want to just kind of scoop up some value accumulating, but in this case, I don't think you do. So we have 2 RBs, 3 wide receivers. Brian Robinson does correlate with what we're doing for the Jaden Daniels stuff, and I think this guy is going to take him if I don't take him. So I'm going to take Brian Robinson here. Really want to get some Washington correlation in this guy. Taking McLaurin, taking Deebo Samuel next to me. So I'm just trying to get a player here that's not directly correlating the way that, again, we normally look for DFS, where you would say probably an Austin Eckler, more directly correlated to Jaden Daniels, where if Jaden's scoring a bunch of passing touchdowns, maybe a few of those go Eckler's way. They're not very likely to go Brian Robinson's way. But if the Commanders put up games like they did last year, scoring 35-plus points with some frequency, you could see 4 touchdowns go Jaden's way between rushing and receiving or, passing. And then, 2 go Brian Robinson's way because he's cleaning up all the goal line work. So with how that correlation goes in best ball, I think you want to be much more open-minded to QB, RB. People don't correlate those enough, but their fates are tied pretty closely and certainly more than I'd say people realize. All right, we're on the clock here. I think a 4th receiver would make a lot of sense. I really try to make sure I'm not going into the 100s with only 3 receivers generally. Cooper Kupp would work for me here. We have no shot at Baker Mayfield. He went right before my pick, so that's not an option. And Cooper Kupp to me is a guy that I know is a less sexy click. I could have also absorbed Travis Kelce here, I suppose, but really wanted to get the 4th receiver in. For Cooper Kupp, I think on PPR sites like DraftKings, Drafters, another site out there, does a similar PPR thing for best ball. I think Cooper Kupp's a little bit more valuable on there. The big issue for him and really for Jackson Smith and Jigba, they both are slot guys naturally. Like they shouldn't be playing out wide at this stage of their careers. JSN has shown nothing there. Cooper Kupp, he's shown very little there. That's a better way to say it. Cooper Kupp has shown that he absolutely is better out of the slot. I'm not crazy about Cooper Kupp, but I feel like him, Josh Downs, if those guys are your wide receiver 4, you're okay. If they're your wide receiver 5, you're even better. But I think for Cooper Kupp, I like him enough here as a bit of a tier break. So that's where we are right now. We catch up on chats because I've been neglecting this a little bit. Quinshon Judkins, Leroy Jenkins' contract negotiation. I mean, he really did. He negotiates about as well as I do with my deals. So I was going to say that. No pun on all of my incidental things I say about Quinshon Judkins' unfortunate situation. Though, I mean, again, you get what you get if that's the thing you're doing with your time. But, we don't need to talk about that. I don't need to be the moral police of punching women in the face. Hopefully you guys are in agreement. Not a good thing generally. But interesting to see him fall, though, because there was a period where Quinshon Judkins was going right where DeAndre Swift was. And certainly if he somehow escapes all the legal issues, if it is something where he's innocent, he will probably be undervalued. But I just think in best ball, a lot of what I've learned is that you're better off looking for projectable things, looking for reasons why a guy would make sense at a certain ADP, but not in another one. You're still competing with Judkins, competing against guys like Jalen Warren, who are likely in a timeshare for Pittsburgh, but still he's going to be a trusted back there. Competes with the rookie coming in with Caleb Johnson, even though they're totally different backs. Caleb Johnson, more a traditional bruiser back, has a little more mobility, kind of like what do they say, like a bear on ice skates kind of thing. But still a guy that, is not the same back to Jalen Warren, probably won't be trusted on third downs as much, would be my guess. So I still like Jalen Warren here. Travis Etienne has that shot at being a big riser in a Liam Cohen offense for Jacksonville. I think he's worth a shot more. Tony Pollard, I think, is not a sexy click, but is a guy that had a pretty good role last year, getting decent red zone work. Pollard last year, 2.1 red zone rushes a game, 19.7 attempted touches game overall for him, which is kind of crazy. And the offense should be a little more clean this year without Will Levis doing meme content basically back there. So point being, there's a lot of guys you could take over Judkins even in this range. I wanted to get to a spot where it's like, he's got to be next to some dudes I have some real question marks about. Like Judkins at this point, I think the question marks for Judkins are as big as Bashal Tutin's. And like, I'm not a Bashal Tutin guy. I get he avoided a lot of tackles. Normally do. I fall in love for those guys. But he got stuffed in the run a crazy amount. He fumbles a good amount. He's not an elite pass catcher. I don't think he fits the criteria to me of like a Bucky Irving did last year. I think he's kind of a player where there's upside there and there's downside. Maybe he doesn't even see the field. For Judkins, I think that's sort of where I'd view him more, but that's how the news changes things for people. I was never a big Judkins guy. Just feel like he wasn't a bell cow last year for OSU, splitting the share Travion Henderson, but now it's certainly gotten worse for him. We're on the clock here. Brandon Ayuk, the team could probably absorb at wide receiver, but I am going to go Tyrone Tracy here. A little bit of an ADP value. Want to make it up a little bit more at running back. So Tyrone Tracy going to be my pick. My fourth running back off the board. So a 1-4-4 build right now. And definitely time to think about who QB2 can be for me because we have options here potentially. But I could also just take the fifth receiver. So Caleb Williams, I think, is a bit of a tier break at QB. Though certainly I could wait for Stroud with Nico, and I don't think that'd be bad. Brandon Ayuk, I just have a hard time drafting. Just knowing he's going to miss 8 weeks. And there's going to be a ramp-up period, and I do believe in Juwan Jennings, as I've talked about enough on stream this year. I think I'm going to take Caleb here. Like the idea of a Jane Daniels-Caleb pairing. I feel like I haven't done it a lot here. Unfortunately, I have no Week 17 correlation right now where Washington playing Dallas in Week 17. If you can memorize all these games, you should. But if not, you could just use a cheat sheet for yourself if you want. No Dallas guys on my bring back right now for Washington, so that's not great. For Chicago, I have Caleb Williams stacked up with Odunze, but no Niners coming back. So maybe a flaw in the process here for me. Maybe I should have just waited for Sam Darnold with my Seattle correlations. But that's how best ball goes. So we are here in round 10, so halfway through. Guys, show some love if you can. Hit that like button. Subscribe as well to Stochastic if you can. Again, it's not traditionally a best ball channel on here. They've done a kindness to me, allowing me on to try to extol the good word of best ball on here. And DraftKings really is a tournament I want to make sure I'm getting action in on. It's going to be about my 30th entry today. We'll see how many I can get in the back half of July and August. So I'm also trying to be mindful of maxing out or getting close to maxing out on a bunch of the other best ball sites out there. For DraftKings, really do think it behooves you guys this year to get some entries in. There's been overlay in previous years as well. So you have a shot of there being some wild card teams that could advance. Obviously, overlay a thing that will always benefit you when the site puts in more money than it's getting put in. That's something that helps out the equation of just your expected value calculus. But DraftKings is here $15 million prize pool, in particular for newbies on there. If you get your first draft in, you get another one for free. And really, if you follow those rules of thumb of being ADP mindful, stacking and correlating, and also just remembering that the payouts in week 17, you'll probably find some money coming back in. You can't guarantee it because injuries, that luck component is always tough. Frankly, the playoff pods can also be tough where you end up in batches of super teams. Sometimes other people end up versus teams that are completely dead and limping into the playoffs. That's also a thing in best ball. There's a lot of luck that goes in. But positioning yourself to get the best shot you can at that money up top when there is $15 million in prizes and $2 million in first place and your top 10 finishers all win 100K. That's sort of what you're trying to take a shot at. So DraftKings offers that for you. Definitely a good site to play on this year, even though there are multiples of them. What do you think of taking both RB and handcuff, Jacobs early and Lloyd later? It's a smart or stupid, thanks. Generally, you don't want to do it because you are competing for the same role theoretically. That said, the NFL at this point is often, RB1. So a lot of times RB1A, RB1B. So a case like Jacksonville, where we have the ambiguous backfield there, you probably don't want to take all three. Like you don't want to take Bigsby, ATN, and Tootin. They can get away with taking two of them, but really the big way these guys pay off at ADP is that one of them hits, becomes a very valuable back, earns a pass game role, earns some red zone work, ideally. But I certainly see a pathway where ATN can get that third down work, can be your primary back between the 20s. Well, meanwhile, Tank Bigsby gets goal line work, tough downs, things like that. Certainly, if you want to make the case for Tootin, you can find your way to argue that as well. I don't mind taking two of those guys in that situation, but again, I wouldn't take all three. I feel like that's how the case can be made for most backfields, but it also comes down to draft capital. Like to me, taking Caleb Johnson and Jalen Warren, I think is a little bit of a fool's errand. We're taking DeAndre Swift here and then taking Roshan Johnson basically for free or close to it in round 15 or so. I think those are different bets you can be more uncomfortable with. So probably comes down mostly to ADP where like if it's two guys in the top 100, I'm probably not doing that. But if it's two guys with a decent split in between, your mileage may vary on taking both. You can do it sometimes, but I think in general, trying to take one is the goal. And then if you take a lot of the guy, take a lot of Tyjae Spears, you want to make sure you back some amount of Tony Pollard in because those guys are going to be splitting a backfield for most of the year. But that's one too. You could take both guys, but I usually take one. It's kind of personal choice, be my guess. But historically, though, in best ball, people have advocated for you want a guy who wins the backfield. You want to end up with Kareem Hunt sort of last year. That kind of guy. Not that he's not a perfect example by any stretch. But that's sort of what you want as a guy that takes over a backfield. So your mileage may vary, to be honest, with either approach. 2440 here. I do think pretty strongly that Marvin Mims, the tier break at the spot. I use that phrase too much, but like really, that's sort of how I view best ball, where there are certain spots where it's like after running back in this position, running back falls off a cliff. Relatively to what that last running back was. Wide receiver, same thing, where I think for Marvin Mims, he's a player that flashed to me in a pretty big way with a role that wasn't great. Certainly could get squeezed by more guys coming in, but I think overall, for guys like Mims, like just recognizing the upside they had, how the role grew throughout the year, how he frankly had some of the most clutch plays to the team down the home stretch last year, long touchdowns, things like that. He's also guaranteed an active roster spot because of the fact he's on special teams is pretty elite as a returner. So guys like Marvin Mims, I think that he in particular is like the last wide receiver 5 I want normally. If I go later than that, I think you're getting into some problems. We have a 2450 here. Now we can add a little bit more on with Tampa Bay. Rashad White, a guy that I've liked a good amount at these price tags. Kind of crazy to see Jonnu Smith go this early. Jonnu Smith on this site, DraftKings, other sites out there like Underdog. I've seen Jonnu Smith go 177, 180. I've scooped him up at. Here in this room, this guy took Jonnu at 133. So being ADP mindful, big part of the equation. Drafted CMC and Garendo and Connor Benson. I mean, Connor and Benson, pure timeshare. I think that's one, or at least that's their goal based on what the coaches have said. But it really does come down to like how you feel comfortable with CMC and Garendo. The bet's so big on CMC at that point, you're taking him in the first round, most likely. Maybe in some rooms you're getting lucky, you're taking him in the beginning of the second round. But the price you're paying for him is so high that he has to be so elite that I would have a hard time handcuffing him. I think you're at that point. You're just trying to chase, sunken cost fallacy at that point of a guy, your first round pick failed, so you're trying to make it up with Garendo. I don't think that's the right move. But, again, that's just me kind of holding my finger to the wind. It is a little bit of a personal preference thing. Generally, the stats would say it's more stupid than not, but again, in backfields and in the NFL, where mostly you have a lot of guys getting 8 to 15 touches and splitting it. you're probably going to be okay. And the thing to me, like the tiebreaker, I think would be how do these guys score touchdowns? Like, let's say you had Gus Edwards and Nick Chubb on the same team. So these guys are functionally not pass catching backs. They're both power backs. They could maybe get you 20 touches in a certain game. At this stage of their careers, they're probably not going to do that. You probably don't want both those guys if they were on the same team because they're doing the exact same thing. Whereas like for DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson, you got a decent shot that Roschon Johnson could be the goal line back. DeAndre Swift's going to be your primary back. Those guys can score in different ways, can theoretically both hit 10 to 15 points in a game together, perhaps. Montgomery and Gibbs, again, really steep price tag. If you take both those guys, they do score touchdowns in different ways and score enough in concert. I think those are more tenable kind of shared backfields, but generally the stats would say take a guy who's going to win the backfield, I believe would be the historical back testing. Kyle Williams at 12-3 seems a little early. I mean, people haven't caught up that Kyle Williams was playing behind Pop Douglas all of minicamp and OTAs. This is now the time period as well, guys, where on my Splash Play channel, my goal is starting Monday, as long as there's enough news over the weekend. I guess there probably is already at this point. Enough training camp news to put out basically morning videos every day. Less than 10 minutes is my goal of just what the news is, what my take on it is. So that's something I'll be putting out on my Splash Play channel if you want to get into that mix on things. This stage of year, being up on like where guys are playing in particular, not so much this guy made a sick catch on Twitter, like that might move ADPs a little bit, but in general, it doesn't impact how the guy's going to play. But if you know Trey Harris is all of a sudden playing above Quentin Johnston whenever he comes to terms of this deal, but like in general, let's say that's the thing that happens. Trey Harris should be then, a wheels up kind of play. He's now beat out a guy as a starter. He's getting regular work. Certainly that could sometimes be a false flag. Guys like Brendan Rice last year for the Chargers played a little bit more as a rookie in training camp than you would have thought. Then they played a little bit in games and didn't really get into the mix meaningfully. The point being, that's kind of assumption you would make then because, hey, Trey Harris is competing for the same spot, this boundary receiver role. For the Chargers, he's playing above a guy that we know is established in Quentin Johnston. That's something that you want to then be really mindful of. Puka Nacua a couple years ago is the same thing. Rashawn McVay kept talking him up. He was playing with the first team. He's getting the mix more. Like there was a drumbeat there. Kyron Williams as well that same year with him being involved as a third down back. Like he went from being undraftable to being a draftable player. Following news in training camp is your biggest thing. So people not following the news closely enough will keep taking Kyle Williams because he got good draft capital. And they might still do it anyway because they think he's explosive and whatever. They liked him coming out of college. But in reality, to me, the fact he's playing behind Pop Douglas and I don't see him as an outside receiver, that would be enough for me to be like, yeah, I'm probably not going to take a lot of Kyle Williams. And I haven't. I mean, wasn't big on him pre-draft either, like some people out there were. But now that I know he's playing behind guys, like I don't know why you wouldn't take the guy. Like Pop Douglas, I think is greatly undervalued. Not a sexy play, but for a PPR site especially. I think we could do something interesting with Washington where I can take Austin Eckler as well, try to capture. And again, another backfield that we were talking about a moment ago. They score their touchdowns in different ways. Do Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. So I'm going to have a weird Washington correlation where I've got Jaden Daniels. I've got Brian Robinson. I've got Austin Eckler. Could not get Debo. The guy reached really early for him. Could not get McLaurin. That was how it aligned. But I like the way that can go with hopefully taking Eckler and Brian Robinson. And I would like to get another receiver here, ideally. We do have a pretty decent Tampa Bay bet going with Mike Evans and Rashad White. And we do have Devon Achane as the Week 17 bring back. I'm not crazy about this guy, taking him at ADP necessarily, but I'm going to take Jalen McMillan here. I thought he showed me a little bit last year in terms of resiliency and all that, where he's a player that I thought started the year really unlucky, had some plays that didn't work out, some touchdowns he left on the table. Team lost trust in him. Then when Godwin got hurt, he got back in the mix more, ended up kind of establishing a role. I think he's going to be harder to ice for Mika Egbuka than people realize because McMillan played out wide fairly well, played out the slot decently well as well. So there's a shot where he can work out, but it is tough to overcome a guy like Egbuka coming in with good draft capital and getting hyped up too, the same way McMillan did last year. So I haven't taken a lot of McMillan. I'll take him in this spot. And there we go. Happy to help Spizwolf. And my take on Samson upset you. Sorry. I mean, that's the goal. That's not really the goal. I'm not like a hot take guy, but I come about things based on the data I look at. Like I, again, ran Football Outsiders for a year, or more than that. Technically made the most money possible, even though the fucking business died because it's great. Because people take so much money in investments. Neither here nor there. Point being, though, is like I come about my stuff as earnestly as I can. With Samson, I just think the issue is like it's really hard to go from a Tennessee again, I would say a video game offense there. Ton of motion, guys spread out wide. You could be a freak athlete, but you just don't really know how to play the position. That'd be my guess for Samson, and he goes at pick 147 here. I'd much rather have the vet and Jerome Ford, who's been there, been trusted, and for us as fantasy players, has spiked multiple times. But certainly with Judkin's situation up in the air now, like Samson can win it. It's ambiguous, I would say, for sure. So I could be wrong about it. Samson's got a shot now, which I don't know that he would have had with Judkins and Ford there. He's getting the mix of like pony personnel and stuff like that, but I think he's got a much more live shot, and he is a freak athlete. But again, so is Jalen Wright, and he could not get on the field, and when he did, he sucked. I think that's what happens with Tennessee backs, at least in year one. Going to be a 4 tight end team. Let me grab my Cialis. So I got Robert Griffin III, does like a good 4 tight end team. And given the fact that I've got a stone cold 0 at this point, I think we're going to grab a lot of tight ends late. When frankly, too, the tier is tough because Zach Ertz went at 146 here. We'll see what we get back. Let's see. Shout Green checkmark with the Stochastic Avatar. Appreciate him here, and also on my Splash Play channel. Appreciate seeing these guys everywhere. Going 3 slim stacks: Puka Nacua and Stafford, London Penix and Downs Warren. Downs Warren and Daniel Jones. Like what? Stacking up receiver and tight end. I wouldn't count as a slim stack, but yes, Daniel Jones. Sure, that's fine. Look, people love 3 QB builds this year. I still think the big thing with a 3 QB build is like it does tend to be the most important to get that as a full week 17 stack where you have the QB with wide receiver and a bring back from the other team they're playing in week 17. That's where your money is really made, and the value, based on past data is for 3 QB stacks is, a shot at basically 3 game environments in week 17 that you hope can spike and then have a bunch of outliers from it. But I certainly think 3 QBs seems to be the move du jour. I mean, there are people out there, their Discords I follow that I would say are pretty sharp, that are putting up regular, on Underdog where it's an 18-round draft, 3-6-6-3 teams. I'm sure on DraftKings, probably a similar concept, putting up like 3-6-8-3, 3-7-7-3 teams. Definitely the theme of the year. It's been the case for me as well. A guy that used to love drafting 0 RB teams the most. It's been a year of balance, I think, is really the theme of what best ball is this year. And I certainly think in the past you were benefited by overweighting receiver early, things like that. This year, I think if you are kind of grabbing RB and wide receiver almost equally early on, certainly with more of a skew towards receiver, you're going to be better off in ADP. And QB, QB, we'll see. The people just like being safe at QB. When my best team in Underdog's Best Ball Mania was a Joe Burrow team a couple years ago where Trey Lance had been hurt from week 1, basically. And that team finished top 200. Which sounds like not a lot, but you're talking about beating 600,000 people. So it's pretty good relatively to the randomness of best ball. That's certainly the case there. That's really the one team I have that's finished well that has that as a case, but it did happen. So, 3 QBs make people feel more safe. I don't know that actually matters that much. All right, time to get some tight ends here. I think Mike Gesicki is a tight end. That's enough. Part of a high-scoring offense, theoretically. Cincinnati's added nothing of value on defense. Their first-round pick, Shamar Stewart, might go back to college because that's how bad it is right now. The situation with him and it was hilarious with him and the Bengals. So he's trying to figure out if he could do it. His team apparently thinks, like his representation thinks that he can go back to college. We'll see how that works out. But point being, like, Bengals are a disaster. So getting any offensive pieces from the Bengals, I'm cool with. Got Cade Otton here to complete our Tampa Bay stack, or not complete it, but to add some more on there. Sans the QB. I could live with that. Chig Okonkwo, I think a similar bet to me, but I'll go Cade Otton here. So we've got 2 tight ends. Would have really liked to have gotten Zach Ertz closer to his normal ADP. He went like 145 here. I guess the guy didn't reach that much. Ertz is coming up a little bit on DraftKings. Man, the ADPs on DraftKings, I feel like move a little more aggressively than other sites. Guys move up pretty aggressively at a higher frequency. It just feels that way. Might be anecdotal. My team so far, though, is a 2-6-6-2. We got Jaden Daniels, again, our elite QB here. It was definitely a decision tree moment. I didn't love that I didn't get McLaurin or Debo with it. I'm missing out on McLaurin, I get. Missing out on Debo, I feel like that should have been there for me, but the guy I reached early, I kind of think out of spite would be my guess. We got Jaden Achane, Kenneth Walker, Nico Collins, Mike Evans, Romo Dunze. First tight end off the board is Mike Gesicki, which I know is not enough at tight end, so we're going to try to add some volume there later on in the draft with guys who are actually in the rotations at tight end, and ideally starters. Brian Robinson Jr. as part of our Washington stack because we could not get the good receivers. Cooper Kupp, part of our Seattle bet along with Kenneth Walker. Tyrone Tracy, Caleb Williams, Marvin Mims, Rashad White, Austin Eckler, again, that Washington weirdo stack with the QB and 2 RBs. More Tampa Bay with Jalen McMillan, Cade Otton. Frankly, the concern with Tampa Bay is that number one, I have a lot of correlation here for Tampa Bay without having Baker Mayfield, so that's never a great thing. Number two would be, like, I could easily get beaten out by like a Godwin Igbuka team. I think those guys are competing for the same opportunity with how I view Igbuka, but that would be the shitty part when you stack up a team, but you don't really get the best pieces of it, is that like you could easily lose to a team that has the best pieces when you get to the playoff pods. That's certainly be a bummer to make it to week 17, make it to the finals, and my shitty Tampa Bay team loses to a much better version of Tampa Bay. But that's how it goes. Agree with the app take about DK, especially after the 6th round. Yeah, I mean, look, DraftKings is a moving landscape more than most, I would say, especially this time of year, because you are getting, with this best ball week stuff going on, getting a lot of people coming in that probably don't know best ball as well as you guys do, that somebody who's seeking out a stream on YouTube or Twitter to get some sort of, feedback, some sort of, non-echo chamber approach to it. There are people that go into best ball drafts not knowing best ball at all and think that because they play in a redraft league, because they play NFL DFS, they can hop in and build good teams. And in reality, much like anything in gambling, building up that callus, learning ADPs, being able to navigate them thoroughly. It's one of those things where, I mean, people have tried optimizers for best ball, but you really can't have a true optimizer for best ball in the way you would, for DFS, because it's just hard to pull all the things together at once in a way that actually makes sense. Seems like Josh Downs ADP has been moving up lately. He's gone up and down. I'm not crazy about Josh Downs. I think he was a great target earner last year, and that really is my number one tiebreaker for most of this stuff, where if a guy earned over 30% targets, somewhere around that range, I'm generally going to hold those guys in a little bit more esteem, because of the fact that it's really hard to do that, to command targets at about a third of the time you're running a route as a pro. That to me is the benchmark for a receiver being elite, really, even though you have guys like Jefferson that come in a little bit less than that. Like last year, Justin Jefferson, 27% target per route run, but he's running 34 routes a game. So it'll happen when you're out there that much. You're not getting targeted the full 30%, but it's one of those test things for me. And Josh Downs last year, I think he was just over 30. Yeah, 30.1% for Josh Downs, a decent enough 0.2 EPA. Big thing for me is that you add in Tyler Warren there, and that's a player that should be exactly where Josh Downs would have his most success. That's what scares me the most about Josh Downs at his current ADP, is that kind of like Michael Pittman. Like Michael Pittman got, I would say, price corrected by Josh Downs and how good he is. I think Josh Downs gets a little bit market corrected by Tyler Warren being, I think, similarly good, really good catch and run guy. I said it previously in content, but I think that if there's a player I was going to compare to Brock Bowers coming in, I think Tyler Warren would be it. He doesn't need a whole lot to have a good day. But we're on the clock here. Again, we're really trying to get some receivers in. And we have this Miami-Tampa Bay bet. So I'm going to add in Darren Waller here. Surprised to see him hang around this long, but I guess the room is probably good enough at tight end. So we will take Darren Waller as our tight end 3 here, alongside Mike Gesicki and Cade Otton. I think I'd love to get one more tight end, whether it's this round or one of the next 2. This guy taking the whole clock. He's got to think about it. He's scared. I'm right behind him. He knows I'm going to take whoever the player is that he should have taken. He should take Marshawn Lloyd. Taysom Hill. Yeah, anytime you can take the guy coming off a catastrophic knee injury in his mid-30s, who is a running, cutting player, you got to do it. I'll take the guy that guy should have taken instead. If he really wanted a New Orleans tight end, I think he should have taken Juwan Johnson, who just got paid over $10 million a year by a new regime who wants reliable tight end target earning there. And Tyler Shuck, a rookie who I'm not super impressed by coming in. I think New Orleans could have made some better picks. He's probably the kind of guy who's going to feed Juwan Johnson way more than he should. So Juwan Johnson, very cozy click here, and I'm trying to make it up at tight end. And now I've got 4 of them. So 2-6-6-4 build. We got Jaden Daniels, Devon Achane, Kenneth Walker, Nico Collins, Mike Evans, Romo Dunze. Again, star tight end a little bit much, but we just got 4 starters late. That's what you can do with tight end that you can't do in any other position. So we got Gesicki here as our tight end. Brian Robinson stacked up with Jaden Daniels. Cooper Kupp was, again, an important click, really, in hindsight. Tyrone Tracy, Caleb Williams, Marvin Mims, Rashad White, Austin Eckler, Jalen McMillan, Cade Otton, Darren Waller, Juwan Johnson. Can make the case here that my 4th tight end maybe could have taken a receiver here and just waited for Cole Kmet later on, something like that. Frankly, I could still add on Cole Kmet as a 5th tight end in a 20-round draft and not feel too awful about it, just given how little capital I spent on tight end. But we'll see what we get these last 2 picks. Team right now, again, very balanced. We're doing that. Yeah, I talked about that in the Discord. Mike Williams retired. This is a couple hours ago. A little bit surprised by it because I thought he had showed some signs of life. Then there were reports earlier in the week that he got hurt in spring, and apparently that was enough to put him over the top for not playing. So definitely makes it a lot easier runway for Trey Harris to play when he's out there, because if Mike Williams took any snaps away, it would not be great. But yeah, Mike Williams, he probably shouldn't have been taking him very much. I do think he was a free piece for the Chargers, so I took him sometimes if I had Herbert and just wanted something else stacked with him. But yeah, Mike Williams gone. Darius Davis, I guess a 20th round flyer if you want to do it. Brendan Rice, another one as well, who was close to getting work last year, but I think he functionally gets swapped out 1-for-1 with Trey Harris, would be my guess whenever Trey Harris signs. But yeah, at this point for the Chargers, really doesn't change too much, would be my guess. Mike Williams had a few decent games, and really, the big thing for me is I always talk about the expected points added metric from Sports Info Solutions, a really important thing for me. Despite the kind of shitty run out that Mike Williams had last year, still 0.4 EPA per target, only an 11% target per out runs. That's pretty bad. Definitely some signs of dustiness there. But efficiency still there, which for a downfield receiver, he could have played. I think he could have played another year. But if he's hurt, he's made enough money, so more power to him. Look at that, Blue Ball 4. Come join the Discord for more perverse comments. Yes, please join the OddsShopper Tails package, link in the description. Join my Discord from YouTube if you want, whichever way gets you in there the same. Join one of them, though, so you can hear more about us debating 4 tight ends and really nerdy conversations about, is this a 4 tight end build or a 3 tight end build? I think this was 4 no matter what. I think, frankly, again, you could talk me into going 5. We still have a player here that I like a good amount. Another part of the 30% target per out run club, Dontavian Wicks, guy that I think just shouldn't be free in drafts. I know people think that Matthew Golden's going to come in and replace his work right away. If I had to guess, Matthew Golden takes over all the Christian Watson routes, maybe takes some Jaden Reed routes away in a way that's not positive. For Wicks, though, he was an elite target earner out wide. I don't know how that goes away. Like, Dobbs' role is definitely more secure. I just find it hard to believe that Wicks can be mostly good last year, at least in target earning, and completely disappear. Usually that's not how that goes. And Savion Williams, the rookie, I'm not worried about either. But we have a 2-6-7-4 here. Really not a lot to like at receiver. This is dead ugly here. 5th tight end. So somebody took Kmet. Well, I'm going to take whatever comes up for me here. Tyler Shuck. You know what? Fair enough. 3rd QB. That was not intentional, to be honest, but I didn't really care what the 20th pick was. That's sort of how it worked out. Final team here ends up being a 3 QB build, and we do have New Orleans stacked up with Shuck and Juwan Johnson, so that works. But a 3-6-7-4. We got Jaden Daniels, our elite QB. Devon Achane, Kenneth Walker, I think a decent RB start. Nico Collins, Mike Evans, Romo Dunze feels like a decent wide receiver start. Gesicki being very late at tight end. We had to add volume there, but we did it, so I'm okay with that, how the draft capital buckets aligned. Brian Robinson Jr., Cooper Kupp, Tyrone Tracy, Caleb Williams. Could not get Kmet here, so that's how that goes. Marvin Mims, Rashad White, part of my Tampa Bay stack without the QB. Austin Eckler, really Tampa Bay, Miami for week 17 without either QB. Austin Eckler, Jalen McMillan, Cade Otton, Darren Waller, Juwan Johnson, Dontavian Wicks, Tyler Shuck. Wookiees likes my wide receiver room. Good, I'm glad somebody does. It's not me. Like, my receiver room, I think, started strong enough. Again, really the big thing for me is the top 5. Like, we got Nico, Mike Evans, Romo Dunze. That top 3 passes muster. Cooper Kupp is wide receiver 4. I don't think we're off a cliff here. Again, would be better if he's wide receiver 5, but he's fine at 4. Marvin Mims is wide receiver 5. I think works well enough as well. I'm a believer in him. If he sucks, if he gets lapped by Pat Bryant, even though they're totally different players, then Mims will be a bad click. But I just find it hard to believe with how good he was for the role he had last year that he goes away. And then big swings here with McMillan, I think, with Dontavian Wicks. Like, these guys are not going to get 0 routes a game. So that's really the main thing for me. Makes you feel good about that room. So That's 20 rounds on DraftKings, guys. So first of all, let me give you I'll read a plug here. We'll have the ad that our pal Greg Ehrenberg recorded as well, so you can hear all about the important numbers to call if you have an issue. But download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app. Again, really is great to play on there this year. The fact you could draft a $20 best ball lineup right now and get a second ticket to play free for a share of $15 million is a great thing. In fact, it's $2 million up top, tied for first place in the industry for the most money you can win playing best ball. That's awesome too. And really, DraftKings, if you are playing NFL DFS, your brain will kind of calibrate more easily to NFL DFS on DraftKings than it will on half-point PPR. If you play more FanDuel, other sites out there might be more one-to-one for you. But on DraftKings, really playing best ball with the same scoring you have in DFS, it's been a lot easier for me to advance teams. I've had more finals teams on DraftKings than I have on Underdog, just to be totally candid about it, because it's easier to make the finals, but also PPR leaves you a little bit more there. So that's what you're getting on DraftKings. So play over there, check it out, and listen to this brief video here, this brief ad from our pal Greg Ehrenberg for more about DraftKings Best Ball.
It's best ball season, and DraftKings is giving all customers a can't-miss offer. Draft one, get one. Enter a lineup in the $15 million best ball contest for just $20, and you'll score another best ball ticket to play free for a share of $15 million, giving you a second chance to win big. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app now to draft your $20 best ball lineup to play for a share of $15 million and get a second ticket to play free for a share of $15 million. That's two chances to win big without ever setting your lineup again. Draft one, get one, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 18 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions do apply and void where prohibited. One per customer. Enter the Best Ball $15 million headliner contest by September 4th, 2025 to get one bonus entry. $20 entry fee required. Reward expires in 30 days. See terms at DraftKings.com/NFL-best-ball, sponsored by DraftKings.
Crown is yours. Oh no, my thing timed out. No, that's not supposed to. The stupid great suspender stopped working. All right, hold on. Never suspend this domain. There we go. Now we're back. But there we go. That's Greg giving you all you need to know about DraftKings. Call the number if you need to. You guys know the deal. The play on DraftKings this week. Again, you got the bonus deals on there. You can get yourself some $3 entries in the play action. That's good to get for yourself as well when you put in an entry on DraftKings. Best Ball Week March is on there with promos every day, so check it out for yourself. I dropped the link in chat as well. Check out my Splash Play Pod channel. Coming up tomorrow, I'll be doing drafts on Underdog, DraftKings, and Drafters if you want to see some more. And I think there's no other stochastic channel today. You've got your perfect lineup videos for golf, but that's not relevant anymore. So stay tuned for more coming up. Of course, MLB DFS starting hot and heavy on the stochastic channel again soon. And I'll see you guys again next Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m. So catch me there. Catch me on my Splash Play Pod channel. Thanks for hanging, guys. Enjoy your days. Good luck and go draft on DraftKings, guys. See you soon. Bye.